The culture of Singapore is a combination of Asian and European cultures, influenced by Malay, South Asian, East Asian, and Euro-Asian cultures. Singapore has been dubbed as a country where East meets West, East Asia and Garden City. Singapore is a multiracial and multicultural country where ethnic Chinese being 76.2% of the citizens' population, Malays having 15%, and ethnic Indians having 7.4%, making a majority of the population. There are also Euro-Asians in Singapore. The Malays are recognized as an indigenous community. Singapore is a spectacular immigrant community. The main religion in Singapore is Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism. Respect for different religions and personal belief is heavily emphasized by the government, however, banning Jehovah's Witnesses and Unification Church. Religion is an integral part of Singapore. Many of its most interesting buildings are religious, being in old temples, modern churches, or exotic mosques. An understanding of these buildings do play a part in contributing to the appreciation of their art. Chinese temples, Taoism, Confucianism, Buddhism, and ancestral worship are combined into a versatile mix in Chinese temples. Most Buddhists are of the Malaya school, although there are some from the Theravada school. In Singapore, the Buddhist faith is linked to Taoism and the practical doctrine of Confucianism. Islam, the Malays in Singapore are Muslim. A few of the Indians are also Muslim, but there's most uncommon to see a Chinese Muslim. Hinduism, as the Indians migrated, as the Indian immigrants migrated to Singapore, they brought with them Hinduism. The early temples are a central part of rituals and festivals which are held throughout the year. Christianity, one will be able to find many Christian churches of all doctrines in Singapore. They were actually established with the arrival of missionaries after the coming of Sir Raffles. Most Singaporeans celebrate their major festivals associated with their respective religions. The variety of religions is a direct reflection of the diversity of the races living there. As you can see, these are some of the festivals. Many Singapore religions celebrate these festivals just to embrace their heritage, and everybody's pretty open to each other's beliefs and religions. Now on to gender roles. From the Chinese perspective, sons are favored as to carry down a family name by having more children, whereas those daughters once married off are like water thrown out, quote unquote. This is a strong nation, then men are more important, as though they support the family while the woman is expected to serve the man. Of course, this is drastically changed in the 21st century due to education, and women are entering the workforce readily. Chinese women no longer are belittling themselves or expected to rely on their husband. I suppose this is true regardless of race in Singapore, as I see women of all races pursuing high educations and working hard towards their professional dreams. Just like anywhere else, though, women are still discriminated against in the workforce. One thing to note is that Muslim polygamy is legalized in Singapore under their religious law, so perhaps for the Malay community, their gender roles might be a bit similar to the past. The Indian community, women seem pretty self-reliant. Classifications, the upper class, they can afford to have a house full of the latest electronics. Class is not defined only by its earnings of wealth, but also by its education, social influence, and lifestyles. The upper class person has a car and a maid, possibly even three or both, and his family takes annual trips overseas. The middle class is a group of the bulk of Singapore's professional men, as well as many university teachers, upper echelon civil service people, executives, and managers. The lower middle class is general. In general, the lower class is a political conservative group. It cannot afford the luxury of liberalism or the stigma of socialism, although by no means prosperous, it managed to survive at a level of economic and social stability which distinguishes it from the working class. The working class is the largest socio-economic group in Singapore, is that which we can broadly define as the working class, embraces about 75% of the total population. Occupational status is unfortunately low. Workers mainly skilled and unskilled laborers, craftsmen, hawksmen, shop assistants, service workers, and drivers, etc. With all that being said, everyone still has to live by this law. National service in Singapore, commonly known as NS, is when you have to go to the military for a certain amount of time. And this is for a requirement for all Singaporean males and citizens and second generation permanent residents undergo a period of this service. Food in Singapore, Hainanese chicken and rice is a national dish of Singapore. The three pillars of Singapore's main food dishes is noodles, rice, and seafood. Most Asian cultures are rice or noodles, but Singapore focuses on both. Noodles are typically served with stir-fry soup. The Malay dishes are usually based on a foundation of spicy, fishy, sambal, sour herbs, and a complex amount of citruses. Singapore is settled at a cultural crossroad of an entire food-crazy continent. As one of the wealthiest countries in Asia, is drawing workers from everywhere, and the largest population of immigrant workers go there, and good food is sure to follow. Now, not only do they have multiple dine-out options, but hawkers are a pretty hot spot as well in Singapore. Singaporean hawker centers are essential of the street food culture and an affordable way to experience local Singaporean life. There are over 100 hawker centers in Singapore today. Hawker centers are underneath residential blocks to sprawling standalone buildings, surprisingly modern features. They also have surprisingly modern features. Many of these hawker centers have been upgraded in recent years to improve their facilities. Some even have robots now, while others have gone or stuck to their old ways.